Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. You know what's really important to me when I do business with a company is trust and transparency. I've been telling you now for a good while about my buddy Damon Burton and his company, SEO National, because trust and transparency are just as important to them. You know, for the last 15 years, in the search engine optimization space, they have been leading the way and serving people tremendously well. Now, for those of you that don't know what SEO is, it stands for search engine optimization. It helps you show up higher on Google searches so that folks that are looking for what you have find you quicker. And you know what's really encouraging? More revenue, more sales, growing your business. Do me a favor, get in touch with Damon and his team today at SEO National at 855-736-6285 or go to SEOnational.com and get your free quote and tell them you heard it on the Intentional Encourager podcast. I hope you're ready, because here comes a dynamite conversation on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you for joining us again this morning. No virtual background. I am wearing the virtual background on my apparel this morning. As we record this, we were in the midst of a snowstorm last night, so I am snowed out of my podcast studio, but we're going to make it work because the conversation is worth it. And I've got a dynamic conversation coming for you today on the Intentional Encourager podcast. I have a guy that helps introverted leaders find their voice so they can create impact. And some of you out there that may be listening might be raising your hands and saying, that's me. You want to dial into this podcast this morning because I've got somebody that can help you. Coach, trainer, TEDX speaker, Steven English joins me this morning on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Steven, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Brian. We are here in Texas where there's not any snow today. Thank you. We had last year around a couple weeks from this point, we had our snowstorm. So all of us here are kind of licking our wounds, hoping we can have a nice, warm winter, unseasonably warm, and we won't get any snow. But no, doing great this morning. I've been up since 4:30, did my daily workout, and then got on and recorded my own podcast. Well, not recorded, I was doing a live. So it's kind of cool doing back to back. So
and
now
and we'll get into that here in a few minutes. And so let me start here.
Yeah.
You are based out of one of the hottest real estate markets in the United States right now, because again, as we've seen the last 2 years, people are shifting their lifestyles. They're deciding as the COVID-19 pandemic has created opportunities for folks to shift their work from an on-premise work environment to a remote work environment, working from home essentially, or working from wherever home is. You've got a lot of people that are transplanting to Austin, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Florida, some of those different areas. We're starting to pick some of that up here in West Virginia ourselves. Our population's had a little bit of a climb. Take me through the last couple of years for you, kind of what you've seen, and maybe a lesson that you've taken from the last couple of years that once we get through this time, and we will get through it, but once we get through it, it'll be something that you carry forward, not only personally, but professionally as well.
Wow. Lessons I've taken from the last couple of years. Well, I'll tell you, I went through a pretty big transition in the last 2 years. I was working in corporate America for 22 years. So I was a product quality and reliability engineer working in the semiconductor industry. I had really moved up into management positions. I was actually offered a director position at one job, and it just wasn't really my thing. And as a result, in October of 2018, I started my coaching business as let's say my second life, right? I had, we all have 168 hours in every week, 56 for sleeping, 56 for our day job, and 56 for ourselves. That's a good night's sleep, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't think most people get that. And what happened was I went and began this transition in 2018. I completed it December 8th of 2020. And looking at the last 2 years, here being, we just got into 2022. The first thing that was a big lesson for me was that you really can do whatever it is that you want to do. If you will yourself to, you take daily action, you create new habits. And I had to create a lot of new habits for myself. You look at, you mentioned, Austin. Here, we have just such a diverse and large population coming in of tech folks. And so really for me, what has had to happen was I've just really had to put myself out there. I've joined a lot of face-to-face networking groups, which is really kind of funny considering that we're now in COVID. I've gotten involved in the Williamson County Society for Human Resource Management. I'm now their vice president of communications. So I've really just had to kind of spread my wings in a way that is very, very different than most of my career. And I guess the lesson here would be just, be bold, be courageous, get out there and really learn to ask for what it is that you want. And that's really proven quite effective for me really in the last couple of years.
I love what you said there about spreading your wings, because a lot of times what will happen is that people will get to the point to where one of two things happens, Stephen. They'll get to the point where they'll say, I have capacity for more, or I need to have capacity for more by paring things off, by divesting of certain things. And I love what you did there. You said something really important in just now when you were talking. What you said was, hey, I was kind of in this box, if you will, of just doing my thing, basically what I heard you say was keeping my head down and working, just doing my thing, just, living life as I thought it should be lived, going to work, family, whatever. And I love that moment where you were kind of like, it's time to spread out. Can you take me to that moment where it may have been a series of moments that led to that epiphany, or it may have just been that one seminal moment where you just said, there is capacity for more. There's got to be more, and I've got to be intentional in finding it.
Yeah, it really was a series. It was really a series. I'm not a burning bush kind of person where there's this moment of, immediate clarity and oh my goodness, here it is.
Yeah.
It really, I've jokingly said I'm a slow learner, but it's not. I think I'm more of the William James talks about the spiritual experience and talks about the educational variety. And I was an educational variety of spiritual experience. I had to
forgive me for jumping in there. You've triggered something right there that I want to dive in on for just a moment.
Sure.
I'm a football fan. You live in football. You live in the heart of football crazy. So I'm going to make a football analogy. There are times when you bring a quarterback onto your team. Great talent, great ability to throw the ball, maybe a really good runner, but they're a little slower digesting the playbook. And then you may have some guys that come in that aren't as talented throwing the ball, aren't as fast, but they pick stuff up extremely fast. They pick it up quickly. You give them a play or two, and in 5 minutes they're on the whiteboard regurgitating, if you will, or breaking down what you just gave them. Take me through for you. You mentioned kind of being a slow learner, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because again, we all take in information in different ways, and then we pour it out in different ways. Was that something you had to overcome inside of you, or did you take that knowledge that you had of yourself and make it a strength in your life?
Well, I think ultimately the slow learner was just that I always seek some kind of level of stability, and I had to do things at my own pace. Like, for example, I worked with a coach for quite some time. He was there at the beginning of my coaching career, and he was always like, "Dude, just quit your job. Just quit your job. Quit your job." And I couldn't make that leap, um, because I wanted to see proof, right? I wanted to see incremental progress
You're
that,
probably like a lot of other people that would
yeah,
be in that same boat, Stephen, because
yeah.
again, it's easy for somebody else to tell you to quit your job, and they're not staring down the barrel of your mortgage and your electric bill and your car payment. So, yeah, I understand that. Go keep. Forgive
Yeah,
me
yeah.
for jumping in there. You
No,
keep going
that's
with that
okay.
thought.
That's quite all right. And I appreciate it. Where I was going with that is that really that was kind of like my style is to have kind of proof of concept, right? Like I would do a pilot run of something, even when I was in corporate and I was deploying systems across an organization for like preventive actions,
Yeah.
corrective action system. I would pilot in one department first, and then I would roll it out, because I would let that one department find all the bugs and features, and then we would go and do some iteration of fixing it, and then come out to the larger audience. So I had to do that for myself. I mean, this really all starts, you talk about, well, walking you through it. I mean, I'm going to take you back to, really midlife crisis, right? I mean, I remember standing there, it was probably 2013, 2014. I had just gotten divorced. I was looking at my life going, is this all there is? Is this what I'm going to do until I'm, pushing up daisies? And I started reaching out to various mentors in my life. I have an uncle who's a consultant. He turned me on to a personal development organization called Landmark International. I did
Hmm.
Landmark Forum, which maybe some of your listeners are familiar with. I did Landmark Forum. I did Landmark Advanced. Uh, I then started to really, even though it was somewhat amorphous, I started to craft a vision for myself, at least of different possibilities. I
Yeah.
said, well, one, maybe I'll go be a consultant in Six Sigma, because I have a background in Six Sigma, having deployed it at ST Microelectronics worldwide. Then after that, I went over and looked at being a consultant in like strategic planning, more maybe some soft skill stuff. And then I went and looked at coaching. And in each one of those buckets, I met with experts in those fields, like masters in the field, right? Like when I did Six Sigma, when I looked at Six Sigma, I sat down and had a meal with Forrest Brayfogle. Forrest Brayfogle wrote the book Implementing Six Sigma. I think it was either written in 1999 or year 2000. It is a compendium of everything Six Sigma. It's 1,000-page book. And I remember sitting across from him and listening to him and just saying to myself, my goodness, I don't want to do this. Like, not the meeting. I mean, I enjoyed meeting
Well,
him
it
and
would have been so easy for you to have walked in your comfort zone, because there's a lot of people, Stephen, that
yeah,
that will say, okay, if I'm going to do this particular thing in life, if I'm gonna consult or coach or do something like that, I'm gonna do something where I have a broad base of knowledge, where I can probably walk in day one and do some transformative things with businesses, with individuals, things like that. And it's natural to walk there. I, I'm curious about that moment during the dinner. And again,
mm-hmm.
for me, it would be probably somebody like, if I could step back in time, one of my heroes was Zig Ziglar. If I
Yeah,
could step back in time, and his son Tom's a friend of mine. If I could step back in time and have a dinner with Zig, that would be for me the ultimate. As you're in that dinner and you say to yourself, "This isn't for me,"
yeah,
what was your takeaway from that moment? Because not too many people get to spend that kind of time with someone who is an implementer, a creator. I would say this. I would say it would be like a football coach having dinner with Bill Walsh, somebody that was the father of the West Coast offense.
mm-hmm.
Getting to sit down, or just recently The sports world lost John Madden, a great coach and broadcaster, and be like a young broadcaster getting to sit down and having a meal with John Madden or a young football coach. When you're in that moment and you say this isn't for you, did that lead you to more soul searching about what was for you? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What it was that I just followed my feelings in that moment. I was listening to him and nothing about it was that appealing. And to be, brass tacks, as simple as it is just, there's too much about numbers and spreadsheets and doing crap that I really don't like doing. And I thought to myself, there's not enough like touchy feely about this. And I'm more of a feelings kind of guy. And, I personality wise, my strengths, when I look back on my strengths in corporate America, it wasn't really the hard skills. It was more of the soft skills, the influencing, the being able to really connect to people. And I didn't get that feeling when I was talking to him that was what would make me super successful. And, or I guess you could say there was too much of a price to pay on the other side of operating outside of my zone of genius. So like doing stuff that felt like drudgery. And so then I said, okay, well, next. And so I had that conversation with him. Then I got with my uncle and I spoke to him. I said, hey, next time you go to a client, would you be okay if I did a ride along?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did. I purchased airline tickets. I happened to have a childhood friend that lived in the area, so I got to kind of do a 2-for-1 there. I flew out. I met with him beforehand. I asked him how I could be useful. And then I just watched. And I was from the other side. I was not on the receiving side. I wasn't a customer, nor was I really the facilitator. I was kind of in a gray zone between the two where I could kind of see behind the curtain. And it was really great. I said to myself, you know what? I can do that. And I have done that since. I teach classes, I facilitate. But I remember thinking to myself, okay, I'm getting closer.
Yeah.
So I knew at the end of that day, it was really to me saying to myself, I can do this. I definitely can do this. And it gives me more energy than when I started. Like, in other words, I sat there in the morning having breakfast with him. And then at the lunch break, man, I was on fire,
Yeah.
And that's a clue. Like when that happens to you, either when time passes quicker or when you've got more energy when you stop something than when you started, that's a clue that's in your zone of genius. So then I moved on from there and started talking to some people about coaching. And then it came down to, okay, I was thinking about education. I was like, okay, am I going to go get an MBA? Baylor MBA, $86,000. University of Texas, Austin, executive MBA, 109. And those are both dated numbers. I'm sure they've gone up since. And I thought to myself, wow, what a dice throw. And things in the curriculum are not interesting to me. Finance, I don't give a crap. I don't care.
That was my MBA experience. Exactly.
Yeah.
For me, it was quantitative statistics, Stephen. I said, look, if I can pull a C out of this class, I will take that ball and run.
Yeah. Take the C, right? The C, pass or punt, whatever.
Throw the ball away and live to live to fight another play.
Yeah.
Hey,
so I'm just going to wrap that up. Let me just wrap this up real quick. Cause then I was, hey, coaching, boom, $12,000. I said, I'll go get my coaching certification, go study coaching. Now it costs a lot more than that after I paid for my own coach, but that was it. I said, hey, it's an experiment, right? Like there's people out there, they drop $70,000 on a new Tesla or $80,000 on a new BMW. I said, forget it. I'm just going to drive my Honda and get myself an education.
Yeah, I love that. Let's step aside and take a break.
Yeah.
When we come back, here's where I want to go. You hit on something a moment ago that I want to take a deeper dive into, and that is really understanding your skills. You said a moment ago you really had to understand your skills. So when we come back, we're going to talk about how people find their skills. It may be something they come to early in life and they know exactly what they're skilled at. Maybe something that they come to later in life. And so I want to have a conversation for a few moments around that. My guest is coach, trainer, TEDx speaker, Steven English, joining me on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Back in just a moment.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton here. The new year is upon us, and you may be sitting there thinking, hey, I would really love to pay off some debt, or I would like to save for that dream vacation. Maybe you want to buy a new car. Whatever it is you want to do financially in the coming year, let me give you a great piece of intentional encouragement and something to think about that might help you do it. Products for profit. Now, this is a course taught by my good friend Joe Hart, who's been a guest on the Intentional Encourager podcast and has told his story how reselling changed his life. And you know what, folks? It could do the same thing for you too. It's really simple. Reselling is basically buying a product and then reselling it online for more money. And Joe is going to take you through the steps and show you how to do this either part-time or maybe, as some of his students have done, take this full-time as well. Go to coachjoe89.gumroad.com/L/premium PFP. And oh, by the way, this group is going to help you find leads of products that are profitable right now, give you all kinds of great intentional encouragement, and you're going to be surrounded by a community of people that are going to want to see you be successful in the reselling game. Again, go to coachjoe89.gumroad.com/L/premium PFP and tell him you heard about it on the Intentional Encourager podcast. And now let's get back to more great conversation here on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Steven, before the break, you were talking about really understanding your skills. And I love that because in life, and I'll use myself as an example, I know way more now than I did when I was 40. I'll be 50 in August. I feel like in the last 5 years, I know way more now than I did 5 years ago when I was 45. And I felt like then I knew quite a bit. And I had my MBA and I had a bachelor's degree. I had a lot of experience. But, you know, the last 5 years or so, as you talked about those zones, like that impact zone, the different area of genius that you, and I love that terminology. It's really discovering who you are, where you are, and where you can go. As you're coaching people, what is the biggest challenge that you find that people face in finding their skills?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I just want to honor that concept of zone of genius. So Gay Hendrick wrote a book called The Big Leap. And in there, he talked about the 4 zones. There's your zone of incompetence, your zone of competence, your zone of excellence, and your zone of genius. I think one of the biggest problems is that most people, because of our need to please other people and our need to have the pat on the back, is we go and we say, okay, I'm going to avoid this thing that's in my zone of incompetence, this thing that I'm okay at. All right, I'll do some of that some of the time. But then, you know, we start to get the pats on the back and the annual bonuses and the top 10% because of things that are in our zone of excellence.
Stephen, the greatest quote I heard once.
Yes, sir.
To piggyback off of that, one of the greatest quotes that I heard once is from a baseball pitcher in the 1970s named Claude Osteen.
Yeah.
And he said this: a pat on the back is merely 18 inches from a kick in the butt.
Truth.
And let's go there for a second. Forgive me for interrupting, but you're really diving deep into something that is tantamount to many people's bane of existence, and that is the affirmation quality.
Yeah.
Is that they thrive. And I used to be that way. I used to thrive on it. If I would have taken a personality assessment early, if I could go back 20 or 25 years, taking different personality assessments early in my career, I would have very much been that person, probably from 25 to 35, that thrived on affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's just not that important. It's more about genius. It's more about impact. How do we shift ourselves from that affirmation need to seeking impact? Because I love, and I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile when I say that, and I love it. You help those leaders find their voice so they can create impact. And impact is so powerful because influence is fleeting. right? Affirmation is fleeting.
Mm-hmm.
It's here for a moment and it's like a vapor. It just vanishes. But impact can last even after we pass away. The impact that we can continue, and that's why that's why we do the Intentional Encourager podcast with video and audio, because if I die tomorrow, this podcast can live on and continue to impact people as they find it. Why do you think that is a challenge for some people to shift their thinking from affirmation to impact?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what it is, as you point out, is that people get addicted, or maybe that's a strong term, but they they really feel that what they need is that pat on the back, and it becomes almost like a noise where there are some things. So maybe there are some things where they're getting a pat on the back and it's in their zone of genius, but because all they're really seeking is the pats on the back, they don't notice those other sensations that come, like I mentioned there, like, the time passing very easily and the amount of energy that you have, that thing is also in their zone of excellence, or excuse me, in their zone of genius. It's both in their zone. They're getting the pat on the back and the affirmation from the world, but it actually is in their zone of genius. So they need to be able to separate those two things out. One thing that you asked earlier is, how do people get to know what are their strengths, or what are the things that they could do that might be, really beneficial to the world, or at least beneficial to them, more beneficial to them, because the beneficial to the world, it all depends on who your audience is, right?
That's
like
right.
It's going to be beneficial to anybody.
Values defined differently by every person.
Absolutely. But you want to find the thing that lights you up, right? Like, that if it really lights you up, and you're excited to do it, you're energized to do it, you're going to be able to create that impact with people. And where I start with people, really, it's two things. And you were using the term personality assessments. That I would agree with that. That's a great start. There's a whole host of them out there, but one of them that's really real simple, and I think very, very actionable based upon what you learn from it, is the Gallup Strength Finders.
I love that tool.
Isn't it great?
Tool. Yes.
Yeah, and anybody can go down to either Amazon or Barnes and Noble. And
it's $20, and you can learn a ton about yourself.
Absolutely. I found out, though, at Barnes and Noble, it's behind the counter, because people have been going and they just take a picture of the code and then use the code out of it to take the assessment. So just note, if you go to Barnes and Noble, you're going to probably need to ask them behind the counter. But yes, that's a great place to start. I remember when I took it, it was so striking, because they had it was part of a training course. Mm-hmm. And so first thing was that we all had to take the assessment and then write our top 5 with the language around each one that really resonated with us. So I even have a picture in my phone, right, of here's my top 5, and then the words that are associated with each one of them that really resonate with me. And I remember the instructor, he's a good friend of mine, Bob Lewis. Bob walked around and he looked at it and he goes, "Wow, yours are very different than everybody else's." And this is before I changed my career. And
that's a good thing. I like being different.
Yeah. Oh, I do too. And I also like doing what it is that God designed me for. And so it was funny. I found, okay, so my top 5 are harmony, woo, which means winning others over, futuristic, individualization, and empathy. And I remember looking at them going, yeah, that's me, So that would be the first thing I would do. Like, anybody who's out there going, you know what, I don't feel like I'm doing the line, I'm not in the line of work that really excites me. I feel like every day I'm just pulling myself out of bed and forcing myself to do this thing. I love the Joseph Campbell quote. He said, I think it's the biggest tragedy of life is to climb to the top of the ladder and realize it's on the wrong wall. And there's so many people out there doing that.
You have struck something right there. You've really struck something. This is a pet peeve of mine, Stephen, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because I hear, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine last week. So many people use the word passion. Oh, I'm so passionate about this. I'm so passionate about that, and this, that, and the other. I got to be honest with you. I wasn't super passionate when I got up this morning. I was still a little tired from travel. You know, it took us a good while to get in last night, so we stayed. So I watched the 11 o'clock news, which I never do. I never watch the 11 o'clock news, but I stayed up because I wanted to see what was going on with my area, with the weather and the road conditions and things like that. And I was tired this morning, but I knew I had a conversation scheduled with you. And that kicked in my purpose. That kicked in the okay, it's time to get up. It's time to go, make my breakfast, get started with this day because I've got things to do. And that purpose kicked in. And I love what you said there about, there are a lot of people that are hooked on a feeling, right? They're just kind of like, well, if I don't feel it, I'm not going to do it. Instead of, and I love what you said, liking what God designed you to do. Maybe in life, God designed you to be an analytical thinker. And for all this time in your life, you've rejected that because you didn't feel it, right? It wasn't sexy, so to speak. It wasn't cool or anything like that. And you just kind of push that off to the side. But what God designed you to do, that thing just draws at you subtly. And then, and in my experience, I found then it draws at me a little harder. And then it really draws at me like, if you don't do this, you're going to miss it. When you're coaching people, how do you get them past? And I want to dive here for just a minute because there's something else that you said. So there's a couple parts to this question. The first part is I want to jump back to your meeting with Forrest, the developer of Six Sigma. You said in that dinner conversation, you enjoyed the dinner, you enjoyed the company you were with, but you knew that wasn't for you. Was there something about him though that fascinated you, that drew you to him, other than what he had done? Was there something in his personality or something about him that drew you? And the second thing is, what do you want to draw out of people that you work with yourself?
Yeah. So first, just for the Six Sigma people out there who are listening to this. So Bill Smith from Motorola in 1985 coined the phrase Six Sigma.
Yeah,
so,
he was kind of the godfather.
Yeah, he was the godfather.
Yeah,
cool. I just want, just a correction. So what was it about him? Well, it's interesting because I never, I met, quote unquote, met him through a book well before social media or any kind of interviews or anything. So I was kind of coming into it very cold in terms of like knowing him. And I guess what struck me about him was just how consistent and how he just stayed in the game. Like the guy, I don't know his age. I know but just swinging wild ass guess. He's probably in his early 70s. And the guy could be retired. So I guess there's just something about how like consistently he continued to show up to do it. And that struck me, something about him. But like I said, I got to a point where I kept listening to him and he was talking to me about what makes him excited about doing the work that he does. And then at a certain point, I completely checked out. I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to, let this guy eat his poke. He's going to get his second glass of wine. I'm going to thank him profusely, give him some kudos here on LinkedIn, and, talk about how, you can meet your mentors, you can meet your heroes, Ultimately though, I was done, I knew I was done at that point. I knew I was done with Six Sigma, right? Like I have probably 36 Sigma. I have like 6 ginormous Six Sigma books that I still think about, man, I need to take those over to Half Price Books and get $4 for each one of them.
Pop those babies on eBay, right?
Yeah, pop those babies up on eBay. Maybe I should have had Forrest sign my implementing.
There you go, man.
Yeah, I should have kicking myself now. Now you asked me how is it that I help draw that out of my clients? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I look for experiences that they've had. So I ask them questions, right? Empowering questions to evoke memories of times when they felt a certain way about something. And it might be that they're looking at, they've had a 20-year career, and when were those times where it was hard for them to step away, or they were most proud of something, or it's kind of like you kind of got to come at it a couple of different angles. I know, like when I vacuum the carpet, sometimes I'll vacuum one direction and I'll come at it another direction just to know that I'm going to get it clean. It's more of an art than a science, at least in my opinion, in terms of coaching, of asking the right question. And sometimes I'll ask questions, they'll be like, I don't know, or they'll have a very quick answer. And then sometimes I'll ask them and they'll go, that's a great question. I haven't thought about this for a while, and I remember there was this time when I did this. And so it's really just, I don't have a real formula for it. And maybe that's still something that I'm working on. But I draw on, these various books that I mentioned the Gay Hendrick book, that questions to ask people about those peak experiences when they felt a certain way. Because really, even looking at the word emotion, right? I think it comes from the Latin emovere or something to that effect, if I remember correctly. And it means to move. So we are moved by our emotions. So they need to look back on these times where doing whatever it was made them feel a certain way. And then that's a clue of this thing in your career. Because let's face it, because of the needs of the corporation, we get pulled into stuff that we're really not that great at, but it just needs to get done.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And the brilliant thing is to kind of, you get to a certain point. Like I was talking to one of my clients yesterday, and she's at a point where she's in this negotiation with a new company. And I asked her, I said, is there anything that they're asking you to do for this role that's outside of your zone of genius? And she thought about it for a while, and the answer was no. And I'm like, great, that's freedom right there.
Go forth and do, right?
Yeah, go forth and do. So really, it has to do with that, like reflection, asking some evoking questions, and letting a person sit with it. Now, what I've found is that with introverts, though, being put on the spot is a challenge for them when I'm asking those questions in a call. And so what I'll do is we'll kind of prime it, like, hey, what we're looking for, and then I'll send them off with some homework to write, to type something up. And that's a lot easier for them when they have some time to reflect, because they process in their heads as opposed to with words.
Exactly. Let's step aside and take another break, because I want to leave room for Steven's story.
Okay.
And you're going to want to hear his story. And we could park here for a good while and have some dynamic conversation, but I would be remiss if we didn't save time for Steven's story. My guest, coach, trainer, TEDx speaker, Steven English, joining me on the Intentional Courage podcast. Back in a moment.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. I want to take a moment and tell you about my friend Harry Spate and his new book, Selling with Dignity. Harry has taken an age-old concept of sales and he's put a new twist to it, and I love the direction that he's taken with Selling with Dignity. And here's what's encouraging about Harry's book. Instead of viewing people as numbers and machines, salespeople are now given the tools and the encouragement to be dignified in their approach. Here's what Harry says. He says, selling is an honorable profession when it's done right. When sellers feel they're valuable and have integrity and respect, this opens the door for better conversations and eventually relationship. This book puts an end to sleazy sales tactics and proves why selling with dignity can be done, and it leads to massive success. And I couldn't agree more. Go to sellingwithdignity.com, get your copy today, and if you want Harry to sign it, he'll do that for you. Again, go to sellingwithdignity.com and pick up your copy today of the new book by Harry Spate, Selling with Dignity. And now let's get back to more great conversation here on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Stephen, I'm going to kind of step back a little bit and let you tell your story. And you've alluded to it a little bit, the kind of the midlife crisis that you went through a few years ago. But I really want to step back. I may jump in with a question or two around it, but go back as far as you want to go back and really tell the folks your story and the impact on your life that your story has had.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that opening, and I almost jokingly wanted to take you back to Northeastern Ohio when I was 6 months old, but I won't.
Which is not far from me, by the way. Northeastern Ohio is about 4.5 hours from where I live.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no doubt. It's you're much closer to my hometown than I am at this point. Yes, midlife, right? So I had just gotten divorced. I was drinking every single day. My routine, because I loved routines, we're all creatures of habit, was, get up in the morning, go to a job that I just really hated. It was an incredibly toxic work environment. I worked for Samsung Austin Semiconductor, making the chips that go into your cell phones, iPads, all kinds of different devices. At that time, we were just transitioning into making chips for the Apple iPhone. And I would go to work. I would try to leave as early as I could so that I could go drinking. I would come home. And before I would go drinking, I would say, okay, I need to get some exercise. So I would go mountain biking, and that was probably the healthiest thing I did that day. Then I would go to the bar, and there was a bar that was literally 250 feet, 500 feet from my door when I lived in these apartments. And I would just stay there, every night. Sometimes I would make the mistake of deciding to get in my car and drive someplace. My last DWI was in 2014. And I say my last, meaning I had multiple, I had gotten arrested for driving while intoxicated 3 times, convicted twice, and avoided that magic number 3 that would have landed me a felony. I was, I was miserable, right? Like the thoughts of, I hate myself, I hate my life, were really in a constant track in my head. I then started to ask myself, hey, what else is there? And I kind of already described a little bit about this self-reflection. And then it, while I was in the process of that and learning very slowly, I finally broke down and saw, like the last time I had any consequence for my alcoholism was in June of 2014, which anybody who watches my TEDx, that's the story I'm talking about, which is I got a driving with license invalid. After that, it took me a couple of years to really wake up. And I remember August 29th, 2016, I am dating the same woman. Thanks to God, he brought this wonderful, wonderful woman into my life who supported me. I gave this woman every reason to dump my ass. She's bailing me out of jail. And I remember that day I said to her, I had tears in my eyes. I drank probably 3 or 4 shots of vodka that morning. And it was, I didn't drink during the day on a work day, but on a weekend I would start early. And I remember just handing her this bottle of vodka, and I said, please take this from me. So please take it. And she said, I'll save it for a special occasion. And I was like, well, also take this one too. And I went into the freezer and I grabbed another bottle. It was tequila. I gave her both of those. I said, please take them. And that was the first stretch of, let's say, a good length of sobriety. Now, I had played around with sobriety since 2012 after another charge that I had. And that was a quintessential moment, right? So from that time really till October, I was completely sober. August 29th to October is really not that long. I remember it was October 4th. It was Austin City Limits concert. And I was there again with I was there with my girlfriend and a best friend. And I said to myself, wow, I went all this time without drinking. I'm going to allow myself a beer. And of course, my friends, they're not in recovery. My girlfriend's not in recovery. So, she's just like, okay. And I remember my alcohol of choice, in addition to the clear liquors of vodka and tequila, was IPA, right? Not isopropyl alcohol, but Indian Pale Ale. And I remember taking a sip of Indian Pale Ale, going, my God, this tastes so horrible. It's so bitter. My palate had actually changed in that time. And, it was and that was the day that I really, really learned this one lesson, which is controlled drinking is never fun, and fun drinking is never controlled. And because I just had that one beer and I thought, what is this? Like I got nothing out of it. And so I went back and continued to have some sobriety, kind of off and on like that until another time. So I had 15 months of continuous sobriety after that. And then I had a brief relapse over a holiday, Christmas holiday time. And then January 6th, 2018, that's my last sobriety date. And I really started to work the program of recovery. And what I mean by that is anybody knows anything about any recovery knows, there's steps, there's fellowship, and there's service work. And I remember when I got to my third step, I remember asking my sponsor, I said, hey, when can I help somebody else? And he said, you can help somebody else right now.
Wow.
And I turned right around and I said, let me go get myself a sponsee. Let me help somebody. So I started helping people, and that made all the difference, right? I don't know if it's the humble pie you'd have to eat from telling somebody that you're helping, like, hey, guess what? I slipped and I started drinking. I don't know what it is exactly. I mean, they talk about it in the literature that we can only keep our cup full if we pour it out. And that's what's happened, right? And so in the backdrop, you could say, like, from a health and wellness perspective, both mental health and physical health, there was this evolution that happened. And then that time, August 29th, 2016, from there, I had that time of sobriety. At that point, I started to really get all my feelings back. They say the good part about sobriety is you get your feelings back. The bad part about sobriety is you get your feelings back. I started to hate my job, and I really, I couldn't drink it away, right? I had no coping mechanisms for it. So I had to leave there. So I changed my career in 2017. I mean, not my career, my job. Let me correct myself there. I changed my job in June of 2017. And then in October of 2018, I started the coaching thing and started teaching classes in effective presentation skills, outside of work. Like, I would take a day of PTO and I'd go teach a class. And I just kept doing this. And then COVID hit and we went fully remote. And so it was a very interesting transition, right? Like, in some regard, I could almost thank COVID, because it brought me to completely remote work, which the coaching was, and it still is, 90-something% remote.
It's all designed for that. Yeah, exactly.
It's all designed for that, lifestyle wise.
I got to ask you this.
Yes, sir.
As you're telling your story, I'm putting myself in the moment there with your story, and it's, whether it's alcohol or with me, food, my kind of addiction has always been food. I love sweets, man. I love it. But here's what I want to ask you.
Yeah.
If you could go back to, let's say, 2012, 2013, you could kind of put yourself in a time machine and you could go back and you could sit down across the table or in the living room with that Steven. What advice or encouragement would you give him now in that moment then?
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. Like, as you were asking me that question, I felt like I just want to reach across the table and slap him, and also kind of want to hug him. But
And that's not, that's not uncommon, right?
yeah.
I mean, because people that you have been around during your recovery, I think
Mm,
if you would ask 100 people that question, that's probably to borrow Family Feud, that's probably the top answer on the board.
yeah.
You want to hug them and you want to slap them at the same time.
Yeah. You know what comes to mind is it's actually, I've made a post about this, and it's kind of hard to describe with okay, so geez. I would explain to him that what he's experiencing is a low level sense of pain. Like he's at a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10, but it's going to last a long friggin' time. But if he would simply yank the band-aid off, have, but call it 2 weeks of really severe discomfort. Yeah, that's what I was looking up. I was trying to find this image and I found it. And I know those, are you okay? And let me see I'm not allowed to share screens, but
Yeah, let's put it up there.
yeah, please go ahead. I'll just show this.
For those of you on YouTube, we're going to do something.
Yeah, I was just going to do something unusual.
We've never done before, and you're going to see it happen live. So we're gonna share Steven's screen.
Oh, well, you're sharing yours.
Yeah, let me do that there real quick. Anyway, tell us about it though.
I'll just tell you what I mean by this.
I wish we could pull off the.
Yeah, I know. And I apologize for wasting time here. But what I'm getting at is it's kind of like the area under the curve. So you can just imagine kind of 2 curves, right? One is a very, very low level, dull pain for a long time versus a very tall spike. So like a high level of pain. So what I do is I would show my 2012 self this graph, and because I'm a bit of a nerd, a physics degree, material science degree, I would understand exactly what that means. And I would say, look, the area under the curve of the dull sensation that you're currently experiencing is much larger than if you would just have 2-3 weeks, whatever it is, 2 days, 2 weeks. I don't know how long it would take you, right? Because it doesn't, things don't take time, they take courage. I'm borrowing that quote from a friend of mine, that I would just say, look, let's do this a little bit quicker, right? So why continue to relapse? Why continue to not double down on your dreams? But I have no regrets, though. Honestly, like, you're asking me that question. And as you were asking me, and I almost felt like saying I would tell him nothing. But I guess I kind of wanted to jump in on being a little bit constructive to this. But
no, I love that. Because I think we're all a little bit that way, Stephen, is that, I kind of feel the same way about my weight. My weight. I would go back to my 2006 self and say, my God, man, don't eat another slice of pie, you fat pig. I would just be that brutally honest with myself and go, I would have the conversation with me that my doctor had to have with me 2 years later going, do you want to die of a heart attack? And again, I think there is some real power in that brutal honesty with ourselves, because at that point you would have known the journey you were on and go, man, I'm really trying to help you avoid a lot of these dangers that you're about to go down. And I had people that tried to intervene in my life with my weight, my dad and some other people. And I was just so, I'll handle it. I'll do it myself. I'll just kind of, so let me, as we finish the conversation, that's a great place there to transition. I want you, maybe there's somebody that's listening to this morning that has struggled with something like that. It may not be alcohol. It may be something else that there is I love what you said, that area of pain under the surface that just lays there, just continues to be there. What's your biggest piece of intentional encouragement for somebody walking that road right now?
Yeah. Get really clear on why it is you want to change something. That would be the first thing. I forget the Nietzsche quote, and as many times as I find myself wanting to say it is like, he who has a clear enough why can overcome any how. I'm totally, paraphrasing it.
No,
but
that's good. That's good.
but just true, right? Like if you are really, really clear on why you need to do this, and then for me, like I said, I'm the educational variety. It took me a long time. I mean, getting arrested in front of my son, like that, luckily I wasn't drunk. It wasn't a felony. It was just driving with license invalid. It was such a strong thing. And then he gave me, after that Father's Day, that weekend, he gave me this little picture that I put in my bathroom, and it was, Happy Father's Day 2014. Like my why at that point became, my kids, so get really, really clear. I think if somebody wants to change something, get really clear on why it is you want to change it. Don't worry about the how. You really need the leverage, right? You need the dang lever arm more than anything else to make it happen, because the how is all out there, right? Like YouTube ad nauseum, books ad nauseum, people who are willing to help, like myself, ad nauseum. But you got to get clear on why it is you want to do something.
Man, that is so good. Steven, tell folks how they can get connected with you, if they want to reach out and have you maybe help their company or themselves with some coaching. Maybe they want to get past some of that introvertedness that they're feeling. Let folks know how they can connect with you.
Yeah. On LinkedIn, real easy to find me. I'm the only Steven with a V, English, like the language, comma, PCC. That's professional certified coach. And so you can find me really easily on LinkedIn. I'll give you my link tree in the show that you can drop in the show notes, which will have all other ways of getting a hold of me, be it Facebook. It'll have links to my speech, Finding Joy by Disappointing Others, which is my TEDx speech. It'll have a link to having a 15-minute conversation with me, links to my website, et cetera, et cetera. My website is www.stevenenglish.net. I have a free offer on there for a book on confidence. And that's how they can get a hold of me.
Man, that's fantastic. We will drop that link tree in the show notes, and you can get connected with Steven. And man, this has been such a good conversation today.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
Steven, thank you so much for joining me on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Thank you so much. You have.
My thanks as always to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And of course, the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through his word. If you're not subscribed to the Intentional Encourager podcast, hit the subscribe button wherever you get podcasts so you don't miss an exciting episode where you can get encouraged and stay encouraged. And remember, anyone, anywhere, at any time, any place can be an intentional encourager.